Well, there's been, as you know, a lot of interest in islands and island biology for a long time. And so we know about these neat island systems like the Galapagos, but we tend not to think here in Montana that we don't tend to think much about islands. And yet, if you think about it, what human activities do is essentially fragment landscapes. And so human activities tend to turn landscapes into island situations. So a lot of human activity is essentially islandizing a lot of the mainland. So we have isolated populations, small fragmented landscapes, which are essentially habitat islands. So a lot of what we've learned about island biogeography and island biology can be applied to places like North America, Montana.
So what is habitat fragmentation? We think of it as a change in the characteristic of the habitat, and people often get habitat fragmentation confused with just the idea of just habitat loss. And very often they occur at the same time, and loss of habitat is what results in fragments that are remaining. In a general sense, when you think about isolation of populations, which is really what happens when habitat is fragmented, you can think about demographic effects. So by demographic meaning effects that impact the animal's reproduction or survival, rates of survival, rates of reproduction. So characteristics of a population can be impacted by isolation.
In the 1500s, there's estimates ranging that bison existed in numbers as high as 30 to 80 million. As European populations moved into the eastern United States, bison were pressured further west. Numbers started getting reduced, even during the 1700s. Starting in the 1800s, and there was about a good 20-year period in the late 1800s where there is intensive hunting pressure on bison from a number of different groups. Some were soldiers, some were commercial hunting parties, some were people who were just out to make a buck, the hide hunters, or people that just would go and hunt several hundred bison in one day and just only take the tongue and the hide and send those back east. Basically, by the late 1800s, we were down to less than 100 bison in this country. problem that bison face due to habitat population fragmentation is continued loss of genetic variation, because first you had the bottleneck they went through, and right there, going from 30 to 80 million to less than 100, you had a great deal of loss of genetic variation or genetic diversity, you know, within and between herds. And now they exist in isolation in these, and it's more of a concern for the bison that live in the public parks. So they pretty much exist in isolation, whether it's state or federal. And so there's no migration of individuals into these herds. Some of them are heavily culled every year without bringing any new individuals in. And so that's where the fragmentation and loss of habitat, you know, comes in. Many of the herds, both public and private, have been founded by a very small number of individuals, some as small as 2 or 3 animals. So this is equivalent to putting 2 or 3 people in a town and not letting anybody else move in there, and they have to live there for over 100 years and mate with each other. So you would imagine that the people of this town, eventually after 100 years, are all very closely related. And this is what we would call inbreeding. And inbreeding depression is usually evidenced by seeing reduced fertility, higher juvenile mortality, you know, low infant survivability, and lowered resistance to diseases that other normal, highly diverse populations genetically could survive.
The range, I think, was established in 1906, but bighorn were not native to the valley and were transplanted from Banff National Park to the Bison Range in 1922. From the bighorn's point of view, it's an island not because of the fence, but because of what surrounds it. We now have an island situation, and we're curious what the effects of being geographically isolated for a long period of time is on bighorn. So what we did was introduce outbred animals from herds, outbred herds in the area, natural populations in Montana. So we have looked at annual female reproductive success, and females that are relatively outbred, have more introduced alleles, are more likely to wean a lamb in the fall. We've looked at male reproductive success, annual reproductive success, and males who are relatively more outbred are more likely to father lambs in mating competition with other rams. Outbred animals just do everything better.
Galapagos Islands are perhaps one of the best known and best studied archipelago systems. They lie about 600 miles off the west coast of Ecuador, right on the equator. They straddle the equator. So there's this group of islands that's way off the coast of Ecuador, and so dispersal getting there is a problem. They're quite remote, but it looks like organisms have arrived originally on the Galapagos from getting there in a variety of different ways. Looks like some things have probably got over there on mats of floating vegetation and so forth. So perhaps tortoises and some of the iguanas were caught on vegetation and that got out there. Certainly birds and insects and a lot of the plants got there through the air. So populations that live on islands face some interesting demographic and genetic sorts of problems. One thing is that the population sizes tend to be fairly small, and so again, it's easier for small populations to go extinct if there's just a period of bad food or bad weather. It's more likely that they'll go extinct. But there's some interesting genetic consequences of small populations, island populations as well. There's a very strong founder effect, what's called a genetic founder effect, and that is usually these populations have been founded by a group of organisms, say a small flock of birds coming over and establishing. So that small flock of birds is carrying just a very small sample of the genetic diversity of, let's say, a very much larger mainland population. So the population is generally begun with a small amount of genetic diversity. With a small population size as well, there can be inbreeding. So there can be lots of matings between close genetic relatives. It seems like in very small island populations, after an initial bout of inbreeding, a lot of those deleterious mutations are purged, so they're just lost from the population. So island populations can sort of stabilize once there's this purge of deleterious mutations. Not all true island organisms are stuck on islands. When we think about, say, things like the Galapagos tortoise, and the finches and so forth, with limited dispersal capabilities, we really see populations on islands for the most part. That's the population. There can be small immigration and dispersal between islands, but in general it's pretty low. However, it's not the case with all island organisms, and in fact, true oceanic islands, one of the first things that colonizes these things and loves them are seabirds. Seabirds are really, really good at getting to the most little remote bits of rock jutting out of the ocean anywhere in the world. They're very safe places, no predators generally. And so they've got seabirds, for example, frigate birds, boobies, some of the storm petrels and albatrosses have extremely good or high dispersal rates. They're able to move long distances over the ocean. And so even though seabirds, for example, are nesting on islands, from their perspective, from sort of a genetic perspective perhaps, there can be a lot more exchange between different islands. if you think about some of the processes that we know go on islands, what do we know about islands? We know that the populations tend to be fairly small on islands, limited size, limited habitats perhaps, and by their very nature, islands, populations of organisms on islands tend to experience less dispersal, less immigration, less gene flow, and they tend to be more vulnerable to, say, extinction, perhaps diseases and so forth. So island populations in some senses can be more fragile than larger, more robust populations with a lot of gene flow and so forth. And those are precisely some of the things that are going on when in habitat islands. When we think about mainland islands, let's say habitat fragment islands, here in Montana, for example, isolated pockets of bison or isolated pockets of bighorn sheep or whatever. One of the things that is fairly important to try to maintain genetic integrity or genetic diversity is to foster dispersal, or the ability for these things to immigrate so we can have gene flow between populations. So this is the main reason that we hear a lot in the news these days about connectivity of landscapes and corridors. And all this is thinking about essentially islands or fragmented populations and trying to have even little bits of habitat that might connect areas that would allow organisms to disperse between these islands. So it's in a fragmented landscape, trying to make them not so much of habitat islands or isolated populations as they are.
If you were, if you were managing for connectivity, I think it's you need to know who goes, who provides the connectivity, and you need to know when they go, and you need to know by what routes, and it would be helpful to know why they go.
One other sort of related approach for management is to establish populations that are, to create habitat or establish populations that are between fragments, so that you wind up having populations that are established that are closer together, so there can be more interchange among populations.
Another sort of management tool that's used is if the animals can't get there, or the animals or plants can't get there themselves, we might have to help them a little bit. So, for example, there's very active programs of translocating animals from one population into another. So what conservation biologists and wildlife managers try to do in fragmented landscapes is think about some of these lessons we've learned from real islands, and that is it can be important to have genetic interchange of populations.
someone I used to see, but she don't give a damn for me.
What are you doing again? I'm checking my pics. Stop looking.
Well, let me get to the point. Let's roll.
How desperate are you?
I'm so desperate. I can't hold it any longer. Where should I go, like around here?
I don't know.
Should I go behind the car?
If you want to. Where are you going? Where are you going?
People come, people go. Some grow young, some grow cold.
My name is Herr Dr. Professor Eric Green. So I'd like to do a little interpretive modern dance that expresses my angst for the plight. It's called Cry for the Tiger.
You don't know how it feels. You don't know how it feels to be me. My old man was born to rock. He's still trying to beat the clock. Think of me what you will. I've got a little space to fill. So let's get to the point. Let's roll another joint. Let's head on down the road to somewhere I gotta go. And you don't know how it feels. You don't know how it feels. No, you don't know how it feels to be me. You don't know how it feels. You don't know how it feels. No, you don't know how it feels to be me.
The Galapagos Islands, the birthplace of modern science, the world's living laboratories of evolution and adaptive diversity. This volcanically formed island chain in the heart of the Pacific Ocean is home to some of the world's most unique endemic species. Tourists and biologists alike flock to these islands, hoping to catch a glimpse of the evolutionary wonders described by Charles Darwin. Unlike most equatorial isles, the Galapagos are not tropical. Their habitats range in composition based on age and elevation. The most recently formed islands are still jagged spits of bare lava rock, devoid of most plant and animal life. Some of the older islands have highland craters filled with lush green vegetation. But by far, the most common sight is arid dryland desert, a strange sight so close to the sea. The ancestors of Galapagos flora and fauna are thought to have colonized the islands thousands of years ago. Because of the location of miles of settlement, years, these changes and adaptations compiled until the organisms of the Galapagos bore very little resemblance to their mainland ancestors. So little that they were in fact species of their own. The Galapagos Islands had created endemics found nowhere else in the world. After the discoveries of Charles Darwin, the Galapagos Islands became associated with finches of varying beak sizes and land tortoises so large they could be ridden. Yet, on the shores of these islands, there is another species that may well be one of the most unique and well-adapted species of the Galapagos. What Darwin called the imps of darkness, the Galapagos marine iguanas, the only species of marine lizard in the world. These iguanas and their specialized characteristics serve as a perfect example of the shaping forces of natural selection and adaptation. They set the Galapagos Islands apart as a conservational gem. For there, and only there, will you find the diving dragons of the Pacific.
So among iguanas, the marine iguana is unique, and it evolved from a terrestrial ancestor. And it's evolved a whole suite of adaptations that allow it to exist in a marine intertidal environment. And those can be grouped into, say, morphological adaptations, which are usually easy to see, behavioral adaptations, and then physiological adaptations. Probably the simplest ones, as I said, are the morphological adaptations. And these are mostly related to the habitat they live in, the way they feed, the type of food they eat, and their swimming and diving ability. First of all, the most obvious thing you'd see compared to other iguanas is the rounded profile of their head. And so they have this sort of flattened face and a big wide mouth, and that seems to be an adaptation for feeding on marine algae that grows on the rocks in the intertidal and subtidal zones. So it allows them to get in close and crop the algae and probably take a wider bite for each bite. Another thing that's really obvious are their claws, which seem to be longer than their terrestrial ancestors and their relative that lives in the terrestrial environment on the Galapagos. And that appears to be important for grabbing onto rocks, both in the waves and also when they dive to go and hold onto rocks while they're feeding on algae. Another thing that's pretty obvious is that their tail is vertically flattened from top to bottom. And that, like in crocodiles, is a useful paddle for swimming through the water. The iguanas face a number of physiological challenges because of the lifestyle that they lead. Two of the most important of these are maintaining their body temperature while in contact with seawater, when they're swimming and diving, and regulating their salt balance in response to high salt intakes by drinking and by eating marine algae. The iguana lives almost in a desert environment. It only drinks salt water, and that results in a really large salt load that it somehow has to get rid of. And so in order to get rid of this salt, it relies on a special pair of salt glands that are located between the eyes and the nose. These have the ability to excrete a very concentrated sodium chloride solution, about 3 times more concentrated than the ocean water. They characteristically sneeze and spray out this very concentrated salt solution. One of the interesting things you'll probably notice looking at iguanas is a white crustiness around the head, and that's just the result of this sneezing out of concentrated salt solution. Just like all other ectothermic animals, the marine iguanas try to regulate their body temperature within a narrow range where they perform best. And they use a variety of behavioral and physiological mechanisms to do that. Behaviorally, when they want to warm up, they'll lay out flat on rocks exposed to as much sun as they can get, and usually face perpendicular to the direction of the sun's rays. Another thing that's really important for cooling and warming rates is body size. So the smallest ones, like juveniles, will heat up very rapidly, but they also cool very rapidly. And so you should see them scuttling back and forth more between basking sites and feeding sites in the surf. The larger iguanas take much longer to warm up, but once they attain a body temperature, they can retain it for longer. And this may play a role in determining the threshold body size for diving.
The Galapagos marine iguanas are a species unlike any other in the world. They are living examples of the shaping powers of nature. Yet, the marine iguanas are only one example of the evolutionary wonders to be found on these unique isles. The Galapagos Islands have formed numerous endemics, such as the Galapagos hawk, Darwin's finches, and giant land tortoises. The islands are truly living laboratories of evolution, and as such, the Galapagos archipelago is a biological treasure that must be preserved. In order to conserve these incredible islands and their unique species, the Ecuadorian government made the archipelago a national park. In conjunction with the Charles Darwin Research Station, established in 1959, native peoples of the Galapagos are trained as park rangers to educate residents and tourists alike about the biological wonders and conservation of the Galapagos.
Hi, my name is Efrain. I am the naturalist guide. I am still working for National Park. In my job approximately 18 years ago, but I'm still working because I enjoy really well in these areas. Try to show the flora and fauna in Galapagos. I like to enjoy with the people come to here, and I like to show also the islands because it's the area where I live. I grew here in Galapagos in Santa Cruz. My grandfather raised me here when I was a child, and then it's really beautiful. I like this life. About the tourism, if the tourism affect the areas here in this part, probably a little bit, because they say tourist impact maybe is too bad. In different islands, yes, like we have one example, Daphne Major, for example. It's an old island and the erosion was really fast. When a lot of people go there, the erosion on land was really fast, and then they say it's necessary to recuperate that and it's closed their area. But in the other areas, it is possible to control that. It's not really hard. But normally the tourism, not too much, because we are controlling them. Now there is one institute, the name is Seagull. Seagull is controlling all of the passengers, tourists coming from other areas and checking the luggage. Sometimes they come fruits or another things. It's for take care, transport them and virus or something like that. We have some species and subspecies endangered. In different islands, not too much enemies. It's only the enemies as the hawks and snakes. But in other islands also is like introduced animals. But now there is a little bit control because some of the workers of National Park try for kill them, eliminate this type of introduced animals too. about the conservation in Galapagos, there are some people, they do all things, especially also the population or inhabitants in the islands. Because now some teachers, in our case also, because we are training for to do that, for conservation of the islands too, and then we go to the high schools and the schools because it's nice to start from there, because it's necessary for the child to know how it's necessary to conserve the islands, and then all of the childs, they know basically it's necessary to appreciate all of the animals and conserve that. But it's really good because all the people know about it.
Yeah, that is.
Has it hit you yet? It hasn't hit me. Like that we're going to be gone 9 days
No.
to Churchill.
This morning I was actually making plans to go out tonight. It just didn't sink in that it was already here.
Well, we're going over to the Eastgate Center to get some food because although our estimated departure time was initially 4:30, it is now, I don't know, about 5.
Concrete bear. It's the kind of bear I like. It's a harmless bear. It's not gonna hurt you.
Dude, okay. So like for the first time the other day, I look at a map of Manitoba, right? I'm like, let's just see where this is. The atlas I looked at didn't even have fucking Churchill on the map. They didn't even include the upper half, the upper northern half of Manitoba, because there's nothing up there. I had to look at like a map of North America to figure out that Churchill is here and Manitoba, like the populated area of Manitoba is down here, right? So anyway, that's where we're gonna be.
Hey, we're ready. Just I had to call the people we gotta pick up and tell them when we're gonna get there.
Okay. Fantastic. I found out that I may be doing some driving. I'm pretty excited about that. I like to drive cars.
I'm not so sure that I am as comfortable as you are with the proposition because that puts my life in your hands.
I'm a professional.
Trailer for sale or rent. Rooms to let 50 cents.
Are we there yet?
No phone.
I have to go to the bathroom.
No pets. I ain't got no cigarettes.
We're close in Montana. I'm freezing.
Broom buys a 8x12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means by no means.
Okay. So how do you think you're gonna stay awake, Matt, on this long drive?
Just the usual, you know, just go accept the insanity and stop at the whiskey truck stop. Canada. I think this will keep me awake pretty well. I'm pretty certain, yeah.
I don't pay no union dues. I smoke old stogies I have found. Sure.
We were denied.
We were denied at the border. Nope, sorry Americans, you're gonna have to try something else.
King of the road.
Hell is being hungry and knowing the only place you have to stop is a convenience store.
I think I'm gonna have to purchase Van Halen 1. Van Halen 1. We searched. It's Van Halen 1. Best album they ever released. Beginning with Running with the Devil, followed by Eruption, the greatest guitar solo of all time. I have been told that in the 80s, if you could not play Eruption, then you were not able to be in a big time rock band. Okay.
Got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys a 8x12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means by no means. King of the road. Trailers for sale or rent. Rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom by
I think the very first attempt at boosting tourism was a friend of mine. I worked at the fire hall out at the fort long before the fort was torn down and disappeared. He said, could I come along and take some photos? And he came along, took some photos of me, and then he published his own little postcard with me bending over working on a polar bear. And I think that was the absolutely first attempt at telling other people, hey, come to Churchill.
I'm on the train. I'm riding the train.
Well, about halfway up, a little over halfway up, we get to the little town called DePauw in Manitoba. And since there's no road that goes all the way to Churchill, we get on the train there. It's kind of an old-fashioned train. Bumps along real slow. With the permafrost, they can't go fast.
Try and get you guys out on time ever. Out on time? Oh, I'm here. I'm going to change his path.
I think it's time for this.
Get this thing on and climb this back as far as it will go.
Yep. Moving north, you gotta be prepared, you know what I mean?
We make a special effort always to take Canadians, Americans, Native Americans, young, old, rich, poor.
My nickname is Polar Bear.
The greater the mix, the better, and we try to pick up people along the way, all to spread an understanding of North America and of the Hudson Bay drainage and the connection between a place like Montana. You know, you don't think about it, Montana, in terms of the Arctic Ocean or Hudson Bay or anything of that sort. You know, but our rivers go downhill, and where they end up. Some of them in Hudson Bay. That gives us a real nice tie from Montana right to the polar bears of Hudson Bay.
All right.
There's
Montana
molecules
molecules
from
in
the
the water.
Oh, Montana molecules.
The Belly River, the St. Mary River, and Waterton all originate in Montana. Come right by here. We went up to Hudson Bay and feed the polar bears. That's part of the link. Along the way, we make sure everybody gets that concept and understands it and gets excited about it. One of the things I do is claim to see water molecules come all the way from Montana, and here they are going underneath the bridge at Gillum or along the South Saskatchewan or whatever. And so the train makes a neat classroom for studying, and the boreal forest right on to the other end where it becomes tundra. And that takes us right into Churchill, and we don't waste any time. We get to Churchill, and that's kind of a neat town to see. It's isolated with, but by land, the only way you can get there is by rail or by sea or by plane. I find the culture of Churchill quite interesting. As I said earlier, when I first went there, I was absolutely amazed to find that people didn't know about the outside world because it's such an island sort of a mentality there, and that people, you know, they just assumed that everybody had a lot of polar bears all over the world. You know, they had a lot in Churchill. There must be a lot of them everywhere else too. But that brought home to me that, you know, these were different kinds of people, a different situation, and the whole idea of being culturally and environmentally sensitive came back again to me very strongly. But what's happened now, in my view, it's gotten way, way out of hand. Now, the province has not been active in limiting and controlling the type of tourism, and I'd say a lot of it's out of control now. And about 50% of what's going on there, maybe more, is what I would call industrial tourism now. It's not sensitive to the animals, not sensitive to people. It's more just a thrill ride. You fly up there and have a steak dinner, go out and see some polar bears, come back, have another steak dinner, fly away, you know, and hey, we chalk that up, you know, you check it off on your list then. The reason the problem is so great with the garbage is because the bears move through Churchill to the Cape. The ice builds up on Cape Churchill quicker than anywhere else in Hudson Bay. And they get rounded and they also get turned up edges. And so they look like little pans. And they're called ice pans. So you got bears from the south, bears from inland, and bears from the north, all going to Cape Churchill. And a lot of them travel through the town site and travel right by the garbage dump on their way to the Cape. Well, they pick up these odors and some, you know, smells good to them. There's calories, and so all they were doing was just moving in their natural movement to get out on the ice and hunt ring seals, and they have their behavior subverted with those odors they get in the garbage dump. Basically, what we've done with the bears in general, but including the polar bears, they're not hunted so much now, but they're back in the marketplace. The marketplace now is not the trophies and the meat sold to the market and such, but it's, you know, it's catering to the tourist to see a bear stand on his head and, you know, and wink or whatever. You know, people are reaching harder and harder to get the unusual photo, and the people catering are providing special trips for photographers for this and for that, and trying to get different poses and different backgrounds and people and bears in different situations, all for money. And it's just like when animals were in the marketplace for the meat and the hides, we almost killed them all. And they're back in the marketplace. And it's not good to have, you don't want to have wildlife in the marketplace.
dying with the currents come to this part, and along the time there is erosion and fall down the ferns and spines, and then along the time eroded and it made a small particulates and formed part of the sand. With the natura like that here in these areas too, because it's really special. Galapagos is not the same than other parts of the world. More of the birds and animals, they are really friendly, and then they come really close, and they can live with the people. And then it's because never touch them, never disturb them, and then it's good.
Galapagos, I don't remember the figures exactly, but they set limits in terms of the number of people that could come there with an understanding of what the relationship between visitor use and impacts on the resource would be. And the last figures I've seen, they've come close to doubling the number of people that they allow in to view a lot of those natural resources.
About the limited of the tourists to come to here, and some years ago was only 12,000. I think 12,000 for us is a lot of people each year. But now, and the last years, is really increasing. It's more than 60,000 tourists per year coming to here.
You know, a lot of times economics wins out, and it's the larger scale, what we call mass tourism approach, and that's where you get into those more market-driven definitions of ecotourism, where nature and ecological phenomenon are really selling points rather than the driving force behind.
We have a good guides and a little not responsible guides, because just working just for the money. But in our case, we try to conserve the islands and try to check in it and take care, and it's really important because it's the future for generations coming. It's nice.
You know, while there's some good things being done there, I think that broader policy of understanding what those impacts from different levels of tourism are, and how to manage to maintain those relationships is proving very difficult. The Galapagos is a good example of that.
And also depend on the tourism, because some of the tourists, they like the natura, and then they come here and helping us to conserve the islands.
Okay, all right. Well, what we're being told, we think, since we don't speak Spanish, is that you jump in over here. Loco, muy loco.
That's why you're gonna do it.
Not a chance in hell.
I've never jumped off the cliff before in my life, so this is new territory right here. And what a better place to do it than a third world country,
where there's absolutely no medical care. I am a white boy. White boys aren't meant to do this.
مسكين الجزائر نية تسكنها الشر نية تسكنها الليل مسكين الجزائر مسكين الجزائر
Bastard, swim!
مسكين الجزائر قلبي ضرب مني نشافك.
What do you think? I didn't think. I would have been. Actually, I think I pissed, but I would have been too. I think I hurt my colon.
I'm a rambling man.
And you're going to keep on rambling.
Oh, yes. Have to.
John, you've been on the go ever since you were born, and I imagine few people in the world today have traveled as much as you have. Now why?
Well, I don't know. I suppose some of us are cave dwellers. Some of us live in houses. Some of us like to be loose-footed. I'm a rambling man.
to drift away. It really is dark out here. How am I doing? You're doing fine. I'm beginning to see a point of light on the horizon. It's getting larger. I'm getting some pretty good oscillations. Oh, it's coming quicker now. It's really growing. Any second now. Here we go. And oh boy, that really is something. Oh, that's tremendous. Well, that's just beautiful, 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 just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Zero G, I feel fine. Beautiful, 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 just beautiful, 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 and it looks good to me. Beautiful, 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 just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Reading you loud and clear. Beautiful, 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 just beautiful, beautiful. Feel like $1 million.
Who do you call 10,000 tourists at the bottom of the sea? Wired! A good start!
Earth, metal, water, wood. Earth, metal, water, wood, and fire.
much we've enjoyed this to Chuck. So let's have 3 cheers and a tiger for Chuck.
But then, you know, when people started telling me they hunt you all the time, you know, I got thinking, how did I get into this, going north where I'd never been before, to work on an animal that hunts me all the time? But it turned out it wasn't true, but, you know, again, the bears found me, so it's been 42 years of the bears hunting me down, you know. Yeah. So it's fine by me. I've enjoyed it very much, you know, but it was a lot of luck, too. They all think I am Robert Redford. I don't know where they got that idea.
I don't know how to tell this story. Perhaps the problem is that I do not know where to begin. Or perhaps the fact is that there is no beginning or end. Perhaps there is only the journey.
Jimmy Galley's videotaping session 101.
No, is this taping by itself?
Excuse us, Jimmy.
I can't dog it.
I was raised around sled dogs. Frosty was one of our first dogs, and I always thought of him as mine. I helped to take care of him and all of our other dogs, but my parents got to run them.
Good morning. Today is November 9th, 1987. It's a beautiful sunny morning, and we're going to take you on a training run.
Initially, we had only 6 dogs and used them for camping trips and recreation, but soon my dad was eyeing competition and 6 dogs turned into 22.
And here she goes.
My little brother and I would go along on training runs and try to help with the dogs. We listened to bedtime stories about the Iditarod and legendary mushers like Leonard Seppala, Scotty Allen, and Wild Bill Shannon. And when race day came, we were right there with the dogs and handlers.
Hello, this is Dr. Bill Galley's team, 1988 racing team. I'm getting ready here at the Finland checkpoint.
When I was 12, I ran my first race. My parents and I enjoyed training and racing the dogs. It was a passion more than a hobby. 22 dogs turned into 36 and then 60. Soon my parents' sights were set on the Iditarod.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition. This is ABC's Wide World of Sports.
On March 5th, 9 a.m., from downtown Anchorage, Alaska, 46 men, 6 women, and 869 dogs began the 1,152-mile challenge along an historic trail through the untamed Alaskan wilderness called the Last American Frontier. Climbing the steep and narrow mountain passes, then in a matter of minutes, descending through winding gorges while trying to control their team. Attempting to stay upright on frozen rivers. And treading carefully through deep snow and avoiding cavernous holes. Those were the predictable obstacles. But it would be the weather, the unpredictable variable, that would make them rethink why they were here at all. The wind whips and lashes out at musher and dog, changing this vast frozen tundra into a blinding white sky of snow. The sled dog driver doesn't hide, but stands open in nature's icy grip in an attempt to survive and win the last great race, the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race.
Okay, Bill Galea, I believe that's how you pronounce that, is coming to the line now.
In 1996, when I was 15 years old, my dad ran the Iditarod.
Bill Galea of Montana on his way. He's also wearing Northern Outfitters, so you can tell Doug Swingley's had an influence on him. Yeah, I'm sure they get together. You can't underestimate the thrill of being a passenger for the first time. Those dogs will pull out of there. You realize.
I was a sophomore in high school, so I was too busy to go to Alaska to watch the race. But I did have my own racing team, and I raced them in 100-mile races in Montana and Idaho. The following year, I took 2 weeks away from school and went to Alaska to race in my first junior Iditarod. Iditarod rules require that a musher be at least 18 years of age. Because of this, the Junior Iditarod, a 150-mile race for 14 to 17-year-old mushers, is run every year 1 week prior to the Iditarod. The experience of the Junior Iditarod was incredible. To a 16-year-old Montana dog musher, Alaska was a paradise. Dog sled racing was a big sport up there, and the passion for sled dogs felt by my parents and me was evident everywhere. Following year, my senior year of high school, I did homeschool courses so I could return to Alaska. My mom was going to run her first Iditarod, and I would get to run the junior Iditarod once again. During the Iditarod that year, I got to fly along parts of the trail and see the teams as they passed through some of the checkpoints. I got to see firsthand the trails and hazards I had before only heard about in bedtime stories. I was amazed at the challenge presented by the race, and I remember thinking the race was too tough for me to attempt. But my feelings changed once I got to Nome. I witnessed the incredible elation of the mushers finishing the race. Be it the champion or 48th place, getting to Nome was a feeling like none other, and I decided that I had to do the Iditarod. And I had to do it when I was 18.
Cindy Galley from Sealy Lake, Montana. She was born in 1951 in Minnesota. Cindy now makes her home in Montana. She lives with her husband Bill, an Iditarod veteran as well. Her two sons, Jim 17, a junior Iditarod veteran, and Brian 14. Cindy has been a nurse practitioner for 7 years. She began mushing in 1987 and became interested in the Iditarod after completing her first distance race in 1995. And she's almost in the chute. Look how great her dogs look. Come on, Cindy!
Watching my mom's finish cemented my decision. I had to do this damn race.
And she looks pretty frosty.
Cindy Galley, you have placed 48th in the 1998 Iditarod, arriving in Nome, Alaska on March 22nd on Sunday at 11:48 a.m. with 11 dogs and harness. You have all the required gear in your sled. Your total lapse time from Anchorage to Nome was 14 days, 48 minutes, and 36 seconds. Congratulations and welcome to Nome!
Despite my newfound convictions to run the Iditarod, my parents felt very opposed to the idea. I related the story to cameraman Dan Morris 4 years later.
You know, the more I got around it, the more I went from saying, wow, I'll never be tough enough to do the Iditarod to, you know, man, this is something I got to do. And in Nome, like on Friday night in Nome, you know, it just really hit me. You know, I got to do this next year. I can't go to college yet. I've got to do this. And so I made that announcement to my parents as we were getting on the plane coming back from Nome, and their response was, no way, you're not old enough, you're not experienced enough, and what about college? And besides, whose dogs are you going to use and who's going to pay for them? And, you know, those were like little trivial details to me. I just knew I wanted to do the race.
In the end, the debate was settled when I was offered a job in Alaska. The job description included training 24 18-month-old sled dogs and racing them in the Iditarod. The dogs belonged to musher Mitch Seavey, 4th place finisher of the 1998 Iditarod. 1 week after graduating from high school, I arrived in Alaska ready to begin preparations for my own Iditarod. I had no real idea what I was getting into. To prepare a team for the Iditarod, the dogs need around 2,000 miles of training. Training begins in the late summer, long before snow will cover the ground. the training is intense for both dogs and humans. Everyone needs to be in top physical and mental shape, and when not training, mushers spend their time caring for and feeding the dogs, repairing equipment, and building sleds. The hours are long, and the payoffs often seem few and far between.
What's the most difficult part of training?
I think the hardest part is the intensity, because it's a gradually increasing, you gradually increase the amount of miles and the intensity of training as the season goes on, and that means one's life gets more and more compressed or more and more full as training season goes on. So that's the hardest part about training, is needing to keep up with it day after day after day. You can't really take a day and just kick back and say, well, I'm not going to train today.
We spent a lot of time working with these dogs, and you know, we literally each trained an Iditarod team all by ourselves. Ha! Good dogs, easy does it. We can easily do it by ourselves, but you know, it does take a lot of time when you consider that, you know, we were each training 20, 24 dogs. So when we want to go out and do a training run, we'd put 30 miles on our dogs. We effectively have to do 60 miles for ourselves. And so that just adds up the amount of miles that we've run. Ha! There you go, buddy. A good way to look at it is these dogs have about 1,450 to 1,475 miles on them as of today to, you know, go into the Iditarod. That's what they've had since September 24th of last year. But it's nice. We know these dogs real well. All of us have a real good bond with all of our dogs and our teams, and so there's a lot of advantages that way, and a lot of things that are really nice about it. It just means that it's a lot of work, and you know, a 7-day-a-week, you know, sometimes 18, 20-hour-a-day job.
And why would we want to do such a thing?
Well, I love being with the dogs, and I love being outside, and I love being on the trail. And I really like watching the dogs improve and evolve as the training season goes on.
But running the Iditarod takes more than just good training. Each team requires about 2,000 pounds of supplies, mostly dog food. Everything must be cut into usable-sized pieces, then it must be bagged in the proper amounts.
So we're bagging Jim's food. He's got to eat all those hamburgers before he leaves McGrath.
Most of the dog food is edible for humans, too. 400 pounds of beef, 400 pounds of horse meat, 500 pounds of dog food, 250 pounds of fat, 150 pounds of salmon, and 100 pounds of beaver are cut and bagged. Food for the musher, dog booties, and extra clothes are also included. Then everything is organized and sent to the 18 checkpoints along the trail. And finally, once all of the training is done, once the dogs and musher have forged the bonds that will lead them across Alaska,
That's it. Good dog.
once all the sleds and equipment are ready, once all of the supplies are shipped along the trail, then the real challenge begins.
3, 2, 1, go!
This is Deanie John Rowe. Always, and we mean always, a crowd favorite.
Words cannot explain how nervous I was before my first Iditarod. I was 18 years old and about to take 16 dogs across Alaska, but before that could begin, we had to get out of Anchorage.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! All right, that is Jim Galley of Sealy Lake, Montana, on his way to Nome.
Not only does the Iditarod throw mountain ranges and ferocious storms at the mushers, it also puts us up against tunnels and pedestrian overpasses. following day, the race restarts in Wasilla, 50 miles from Anchorage. This is the real start of the race. From Wasilla, the clock never stops running, and mushers are without assistance for the remainder of the race. The only exception is right out of the starting gate, where a second sled and driver are used to slow the excited dogs.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
After leaving Wasilla, civilization quickly melts away. The teams are off the road system for the remainder of the race. The only way in or out is by airplane, dog team, or snowmobile. As isolated as the interior of Alaska is, I still think it beats the chaos of the starting line. I remember being filled with nervous excitement. In the Iditarod, the clock is always running. The first team to Nome wins regardless of how much time was spent resting or running. Therefore, a good running and resting strategy is important. Most teams run for 6 to 8 hours at a time and then rest about an equal amount of time. Sometimes teams rest at the checkpoints along the trail. Other times teams rest between checkpoints. It's mostly a matter of strategy. Sled dogs are high-performance athletes and they require the best possible food and care we can give. At rest stops, the dogs are typically fed twice. Each feeding consists of a mixture of hot water, meat, fat, and dog food. Extra chunks of meat and fat are given as snacks as the driver sees fit. The dogs are bedded down on straw and the mushers carefully look over each dog, massaging sore spots and monitoring the well-being of every dog. Sleds and equipment must also be maintained. The musher gets little time for sleep or comfort. Fatigue in the Iditarod is a major factor. At the checkpoints, veterinarians also look over the dogs and work cooperatively with the mushers to ensure the welfare of every dog. The first few days of the race are pretty easy mentally. The dogs are energetic and the scenery is breathtaking. But the beauty is deceiving. The most physically demanding and dangerous sections of the entire race are in the 150 miles surrounding the Alaska mountain range. Narrow trails, steep hills, and sudden drops are plentiful. The worst sections are hard to capture on film because mushers are hanging on for dear life, and camera crews are in danger of being run over by out-of-control teams. The most fabled section is the Dalzell Gorge, the winding descent from Rainy Pass in the heart of the Alaska mountain range. My arms and hands were so sore after running through the gorge that I couldn't open a candy bar when I stopped to rest the dogs. After the gorge, mushers often encounter terrible trail conditions as they pass through the rain shadow of the mountains. But with the mountains behind, the trail again is covered with snow, and the real challenges of the race begin to loom on the horizon. What makes the Iditarod so unique is the juxtaposition of emotional extremes. Some days seem almost easy. The dogs are in perfect step and the trails are hard and fast. Other times are very difficult. The weather is a big unknown. The health of the dogs is a constant concern, and the long, sleepless, solitary days on the trail are enough to bring anybody to the breaking point. The mighty Yukon River is a master at lifting your spirits and then slamming them to the ice. It's flat, open, and very windy.
Oh my god, has that puppy been eating a little bit? Look at that.
I think he's been in your food.
No, you can't have any more food. No. You can't have any more.
Here, I'm gonna go put it in your sled now. You're handicapped. You think I'm kidding?
Hey, just make sure my dogs don't eat it. They're hungry.
Just 60 miles down the river, where this picture was taken, I was at the lowest point of the race. I was worried about the health of my dogs, and we had a long way to go. When the photographer asked me what the rest of the race was going to be like, I looked him in the eye and said plainly, "It will be the hardest thing I have ever done."
Up, 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 up. Everybody up. Everybody up.
The Iditarod is what it is because it is so hard to complete. But my dogs have taught me a valuable lesson. If you want it bad enough, and you're willing to work your ass off, your dog team will never let you down.
There you go.
So who are these dogs? What kind of animal is driven to run across Alaska? Contrary to popular belief, sled dogs are mutts. They are the descendants of the dogs who have worked with peoples of the North for nearly 6,000 years. They are incredible athletes, driven by thousands of years of instinct. They are willing to sacrifice their own immediate desires for what is best, and sled dogs are loyal friends. Harlem is one of my lead dogs. I trained her myself, and at the age of 2, she led the team for over 800 miles in the Iditarod. She is one of my heroes.
Where are we and what's going on?
We're in Koyak, but as far as this dog team's concerned, they're just kind of getting woken up here, and we're going to be putting booties on them and kind of just, you know, doing the normal routine now. They're kind of into the trail hardened mode where they're used to, you know, we run, we get there, we eat, we rest, then it's time to wake up, we put our booties on, we stand up and we go, and so they're you know, pretty routine that way, and I'm looking forward to just getting on the Nome, and these guys are doing really well. I really can't complain at all about how they're doing. We're having a great time, and you know, gosh, it's been a real pleasure running them. I have to say that, you know, as I've been going down the trail, there's a couple of times and I've been struck just by how pretty neat this dog team's been, and that's been pretty special. And I just, you know, it's only going to get better from here on out, I hope.
Over the past 5 years, I have made 3 trips to Nome. Nothing will compare to the feeling of my first finish, but each race presents its own challenges, each its own obstacles to be overcome, and each is very rewarding. I will be starting medical school in a few months, and I will have to turn my back to the Iditarod for the next several years. But the journey goes on, and the spirit of those who have gone and those who go before us remains constant.